The automated probe carrying Jack Morrison's final message traveled through space for 3 long months. It was a small device no bigger than a briefcase, but it carried the most important information in human history. The probe's computer had one simple job: reach the nearest human world and deliver its terrible cargo. Commander Gary Phillips was on routine patrol near Jupiter when his ship's sensors detected the probe. Gary was a veteran officer who had spent 15 years keeping the space lanes safe. He had seen many things in his career, but nothing had prepared him for what he was about to discover. "Sir, we have an unidentified object on approach vector," his sensor operator reported. "It's broadcasting human emergency codes, but the signal is very weak." Gary ordered his crew to bring the probe aboard. The device was damaged and barely working. Its outer shell was scarred by months of travel through the harsh environment of deep space. But the memory core was intact, and the message it contained would change everything. The recordings began with Dr. Lisa Warren's voice describing the peaceful life on New Eden. Her words painted a picture of humans and Zalari working together to build something beautiful. Children played while their parents studied alien science. The crystal beings sang their ancient songs while human musicians tried to learn the melodies. Then came Captain Ryan Burke's combat logs from the doomed defense of the colony. His voice was calm and professional, even as his ships were being destroyed around him. He described the overwhelming Vorthak fleet and their complete lack of mercy. The last entry ended with static as the new frontier exploded, but it was Governor Morrison's final message that hit hardest. The man's voice was full of pain as he described watching his people die. 2 million human beings murdered without cause. Innocent Zalari slaughtered alongside their human friends. An entire world turned into a graveyard by alien monsters who cared nothing for peace or mercy. Gary Phillips felt sick as he watched the recordings. He had never seen such horror in his life. The images of dead children and burning cities would haunt his dreams forever. But he knew his duty. This message had to reach Earth immediately. The probe's data was transmitted to Luna Base within hours. From there it went to every human world in the galaxy, through the quantum communication network. President Daniel Foster was woken in the middle of the night to view the recordings in his private office. The leader of humanity sat in stunned silence as the horror of New Eden played out on his screen. Admiral Susan Carter was called to Earth from her base near Alpha Centauri. She was the head of Human Defense Command and had spent her life protecting human colonies from pirates and raiders. But she had never faced anything like this. The Vorthak had committed genocide on a scale that shocked even hardened military officers. Susan was a tough woman who had clawed her way up through the ranks in a male-dominated profession. She had short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. But even she felt tears on her cheeks as she watched Zalari civilians being executed alongside human refugees. The United Earth Assembly called an emergency session that was broadcast to every human world. Representatives from 47 colonies gathered to view the evidence and decide how humanity would respond. The Great Hall was silent as the recordings played. Many delegates wept openly at the sight of their murdered people. President Foster stood to address the assembly with anger burning in his voice. "Citizens of humanity, what we have witnessed here is not war. It is not conquest. It is the deliberate murder of innocents on a scale we have never seen before. The Vorthak Dominion has shown us that they view human life as worthless. They have proven they cannot be negotiated with or reasoned with." The president paused and looked around the great hall. Every face was filled with the same mixture of grief and rage that he felt in his own heart. The Vorthak believe they can murder our people and face no consequences. They think humans are weak because we prefer peace to war. They are about to learn how wrong they are. I am asking this assembly to authorize the largest military mobilization in human history. We will build a fleet that will make the Vorthak regret the day they first heard the word human. The vote was unanimous. Every colony would contribute ships and soldiers to the war effort. Every human world would sacrifice whatever was needed to build an armada capable of taking revenge for New Eden. Admiral Carter was given command of the operation that military planners called Righteous Fury. Her first job was to take inventory of humanity's current military strength. The numbers were not encouraging. Humans had only 300 warships spread across dozens of worlds. Most were small patrol vessels designed to fight pirates, not wage interstellar war. But Carter had spent her career studying military history. She knew that wars were won by determination as much as firepower. The Vorthak had made one critical mistake when they destroyed New Eden. They had given humanity a reason to fight. General Nathan Cross was called out of retirement to help plan the war effort. Nathan was an old soldier who had designed many of humanity's military doctrines. He was known for his brilliant tactical mind and his ability to think like the enemy. Nathan took one look at the intelligence reports and smiled grimly. The Vorthak think they're fighting humans, he told Carter during their first meeting. But they're not. They're fighting an idea. They're fighting the idea that good people should be protected and bad people should be punished. That's the most dangerous enemy any military force can face. Nathan's strategy was simple but effective. Humanity would not try to match the Vorthak ship for ship. Instead, they would build the largest possible fleet using every resource available. Civilian ships would be converted to military use. Mining vessels would become troop transports. Even luxury liners would be fitted with weapons and armor. The response from human colonies was overwhelming. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers on every world. Shipyards that had been building cargo haulers retooled to produce warships. Factories that made consumer goods switched to manufacturing weapons and armor. On Mars, the great shipyards worked around the clock building new dreadnoughts. These massive vessels were armed with the latest plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that could stop almost any weapon. Each dreadnought carried the name of a New Eden victim and was crewed by volunteers who had sworn to avenge the dead. The asteroid miners of the belt contributed their heavy equipment and their expertise with explosives. Their massive mining ships were converted into mobile weapons platforms that could reduce enemy vessels to scrap metal. The miners were tough people who knew how to work in the harshest environments. They would be perfect for boarding actions against enemy ships. Even the peaceful research stations sent what they could. Scientists worked to develop new weapons that could penetrate Vorthak armor. Medical personnel trained to treat combat injuries they had only read about in textbooks. Computer experts designed virus programs that could disable enemy ship systems. Word of the New Eden massacre spread beyond human space through trade networks and diplomatic channels. Other alien species watched nervously as humanity prepared for war. Many had thought humans were a peaceful race that would never pose a threat to their neighbors. Now they saw the sleeping giant awakening, and they were afraid. Dr. Maria Santos led a team of xenobiologists studying captured Vorthak technology. Maria was one of the few humans who had actually met a Vorthak before the war. She had been part of a diplomatic mission that tried to establish trade relations. The aliens had been arrogant and dismissive, treating humans like inferior beings, not worth their time. They think we're weak because we try to solve problems with words instead of weapons, Maria told Admiral Carter. They measure strength by how many worlds you've conquered and how many enemies you've killed. They don't understand that humans fight harder when we're protecting something we love. Maria's research revealed important weaknesses in Vorthak equipment and tactics. Their ships were heavily armed but poorly designed for extended campaigns. Their soldiers were fierce fighters, but they had no experience facing opponents who refused to surrender. Most importantly, the Vorthak had never fought an enemy that could match their industrial capacity. As the months passed, the human fleet grew larger and more powerful. 1,200 ships gathered at staging areas throughout human space. The sight of so many warships in one place was both beautiful and terrifying. This was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled, and its purpose was simple: make the Vorthak pay for their crimes. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship Retribution and watched the final ships arrive. The great vessel had been built specifically for this mission and carried the most advanced weapons and defense systems human science could create. Its hull was painted with the names of New Eden's victims, and its crew was ready to carry out humanity's judgment. The time for preparation was over. The Armada of Wrath was ready to depart for Vorthak space and deliver justice for 2 million murdered innocents. The human war machine had transformed beyond recognition in just 1 year. What had started as a scattered collection of patrol ships and defense platforms had become the most powerful military force in the galaxy. 1,200 warships bearing the names of New Eden's dead gathered at the staging area near Proxima Centauri. Admiral Susan Carter walked through the corridors of her flagship Retribution and felt the weight of command on her shoulders. Every person on every ship in the fleet was looking to her for leadership. They trusted her to use their sacrifice wisely and to make the Vorthak pay for their crimes against humanity. The ship itself was a marvel of human engineering built specifically for this mission. Its armor was made from the strongest materials human science could create. Its weapons could punch through any known defense system. Its computers contained every piece of intelligence humanity had gathered about their enemy. Most importantly, its crew was made up of volunteers who had sworn to avenge the innocent dead of New Eden. Commander Jake Sullivan reported to the Admiral's ready room for his final briefing. Jake led the Ranger Corps, an elite unit of soldiers, trained for the most dangerous missions in the coming war. His men and women wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster than any normal human. They carried weapons designed to fight in any environment from the vacuum of space to the crushing depths of alien oceans. "My Rangers are ready, Admiral," Jake said with quiet confidence. "We've studied every piece of Vorthak technology we could get our hands on. We know their weapons, their tactics, and their weaknesses. When we board their ships, they won't know what hit them." Jake was a veteran of the border wars who had lost friends to alien pirates and raiders. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for the scale of what happened at New Eden. The images of murdered children and executed civilians had turned his professional dedication into something much more personal. This was no longer just another mission. This was a crusade. Dr. Lisa Warren stood beside Jake wearing the uniform of a senior intelligence officer. She had survived the crash on New Eden and spent months hiding in the wilderness before a rescue ship found her. The experience had changed her from a peaceful scientist into someone who understood that sometimes violence was the only way to stop greater violence. "I've prepared detailed files on Vorthak psychology and culture," Lisa said. "They respect only strength and despise what they see as weakness. They've built their entire society around the idea that might makes right. The concept of mercy is literally unknown in their language." Lisa's intelligence work had revealed the structure of the Vorthak Dominion. 12 heavily fortified worlds connected by a network of military bases and supply depots. Their total fleet numbered about 800 ships, but they were spread across multiple star systems to control their empire. This gave humanity a crucial advantage if they could strike fast enough. The Vorthak homeworld of Vorthak Prime was the key to everything. It was the center of their government, their military command, and their industrial base. If humanity could capture or destroy the homeworld, the rest of the Dominion would collapse like a house of cards. But getting there would require the fleet to punch through some of the strongest defenses in the galaxy. General Nathan Cross had spent months studying intelligence reports and planning the attack. The old soldier's strategy was built around speed and overwhelming force. The human fleet would jump directly into the Vorthak home system and destroy their military before they could organize a proper defense. "Surprise is our greatest weapon," Nathan explained to the assembled ship captains. "The Vorthak think we're a minor colony race with a handful of patrol boats. They have no idea what's coming for them. We're going to hit them so hard and so fast that they won't have time to react." The plan was ambitious and dangerous. 1,200 ships would have to coordinate their movements perfectly while fighting in an unknown star system against a desperate enemy. One mistake could turn the entire operation into a disaster that would leave humanity defenseless against Vorthak revenge. But Carter and her officers had trained for this moment for months. Every ship captain knew his role. Every squadron leader understood the timing. Every Marine and pilot was ready to do whatever it took to complete the mission. The fleet that had gathered at Proxima Centauri was more than just a collection of warships. It was the focused rage of an entire species turned into a weapon of justice. Captain Helen Rodriguez commanded the dreadnought Earth's Vengeance, one of the most powerful ships in the human fleet. Helen was a career officer who had spent 20 years rising through the ranks of the Colonial Defense Force. She was known for her tactical brilliance and her ability to stay calm under pressure. Her ship carried the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built, and a crew of 800 volunteers who had all lost someone at New Eden. "My gunners have been practicing for months," Helen told Admiral Carter during a strategy meeting. "We can put plasma rounds on target from distances the Vorthak won't believe possible. Their ships are tough, but they're not tough enough to survive a direct hit from our main batteries." The Dreadnought's primary weapons were massive plasma cannons that could vaporize an enemy vessel with a single shot. The energy requirements were enormous, but human engineers had solved that problem with new fusion reactors that could power the guns continuously. Earth's Vengeance and her sister ships would form the backbone of the fleet's firepower. Supporting the Dreadnoughts were hundreds of smaller vessels converted from civilian designs. Former cargo haulers now carried missile pods that could saturate enemy defenses with guided projectiles. Ex-passenger liners had been turned into assault carriers packed with fighters and marines. Even old mining ships had been given weapons and armor to serve as mobile gun platforms. The diversity of the fleet was actually one of its strengths. The Vorthak had fought many battles, but they had always faced enemies who used conventional military designs. They would not be prepared for the creative solutions human engineers had developed. A converted luxury yacht might not look dangerous, but when it was loaded with fusion warheads, it could destroy ships 10 times its size. Intelligence reports from deep space scouts painted a clear picture of the enemy they would face. The Vorthak home fleet consisted of 200 heavily armed warships, supported by orbital defense platforms and ground-based missile sites. Their ships were built for close-range combat and carried massive amounts of armor and firepower. In a traditional battle, they would be formidable opponents. But this would not be a traditional battle. The human fleet had been designed specifically to exploit Vorthak weaknesses. Long-range plasma weapons would allow human ships to engage the enemy from distances where return fire would be ineffective. Advanced sensors would provide targeting data that Vorthak gunners could not match. Most importantly, human tactics emphasized speed and maneuver over the grinding slugfest that Vorthak commanders preferred. Dr. Warren's psychological profiles suggested that the Vorthak would be completely unprepared for the scale of the human response. They viewed other species as either subjects to be enslaved or obstacles to be removed. The idea that someone might seek revenge for past wrongs was foreign to their way of thinking. They expected humans to either submit or scatter to distant stars like beaten animals. "They're about to learn that humans are different," Warren told the senior staff. "We don't forget our dead, and we don't forgive those who murder innocents. They wanted to show us that they were stronger than we were. Instead, they're about to discover what happens when you threaten something humans care about." The final preparations were complete. Every ship had been fueled and armed. Every crew had been briefed on their mission. Every soldier and pilot knew what they were fighting for. The names and faces of New Eden's victims were displayed on screens throughout the fleet as constant reminders of why this war had to be fought. Admiral Carter stood on her bridge and looked out at the greatest armada in human history. 1,200 ships stretched out in perfect formation as far as the eye could see. Each vessel carried the hopes and dreams of humanity's 47 colonies. Each crew member was ready to sacrifice everything to ensure that what happened at New Eden would never happen again. The hyperspace jump would take 18 hours to complete. When the fleet emerged at Vorthak Prime, they would have one chance to end this war quickly and decisively. If they failed, the Vorthak might have time to organize their scattered forces and turn the conflict into a grinding war of attrition that humanity could not win. But Carter was not thinking about failure as she gave the order to jump. She was thinking about Jack Morrison's final message and his plea to make the Vorthak pay for their crimes. She was thinking about the innocent Zalari who had died alongside their human friends. Most of all, she was thinking about the promise humanity had made to its dead. Justice would be served no matter what the cost. The stars shifted and stretched as 1,200 human warships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying death and judgment toward the heart of the Vorthak Dominion. Jack Morrison tried everything he could think of to save his people. He sent message after message to the Vorthak fleet begging for mercy. He offered to share the planet with them. He promised to give them technology and resources. He even said, Humans would leave if the Vorthak would just let them go safely. The Vorthak admiral never replied to any of these messages. His ships moved closer to New Eden like dark storm clouds. Jack could see them through his office window now as bright dots moving across the night sky. Each dot was a warship full of weapons pointed at his home. Dr. Lisa Warren worked frantically to evacuate the Zalari from the northern settlements. The crystal beings sang sad songs as they gathered their most precious belongings. Many Zalari elders refused to leave the sacred sites where their ancestors were buried. They said they would rather die than abandon their homeland. Please, Lisa begged them through her translation device. The Vorthak will kill you if you stay. Come with us to the evacuation ships. But the old Zalari just sang their death songs and waited for the end. Lisa cried as she loaded the younger Zalari onto transport vehicles. These beautiful, peaceful beings had done nothing wrong, yet they were going to suffer for human crimes. Captain Ryan Burke pushed his small fleet as hard as he could. His 3 ships were old, but his crews were brave. They loaded every weapon they had and prepared for a fight they could not win. Ryan's daughter Amy came to see him before he left for his ship. "Dad, I want to help with the evacuation," Amy said. She was young and pretty with her father's strong eyes. "I can fly a transport ship." "Absolutely not," Ryan said firmly. "Get on the first civilian ship leaving this system. That's an order from your captain and a request from your father." Amy hugged him tight. They both knew this might be the last time they would see each other. Ryan watched his daughter walk away and felt his heart break. He had spent her whole life protecting her, and now he might fail when it mattered most. The 72 hours passed like a nightmare. Families packed what they could carry. Mothers held crying babies. Old people said goodbye to homes they had built with their own hands. The spaceport was chaos as thousands of people tried to get on ships that could not hold them all. Jack Morrison made the hardest decision of his life. Children and their mothers would go first, then the sick and elderly. Men who could fight would stay until the very end. Many families were torn apart as ships lifted off into the dangerous sky. When the deadline passed, Admiral Hayes did not wait even 1 extra minute. The first Vorthak missiles struck the spaceport just as another evacuation ship was taking off. The transport exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from orbit. 300 people died in that single moment. More missiles rained down on New Eden like burning stars. They hit the power plants and the communication towers. They destroyed the hospitals and schools. The beautiful cities that humans had spent 20 years building turned into burning ruins in less than an hour. Captain Burke launched his 3 ships to fight the Vorthak fleet. He knew he could not win, but he had to try. Every minute his ships survived was another minute for evacuation ships to escape. The New Frontier, Liberty Dawn, and Colonial Pride flew straight at 40 enemy warships without fear. The battle was over before it really began. Vorthak ships were bigger and stronger and had better weapons. The Colonial Pride exploded when 3 enemy missiles hit her at the same time. The Liberty Dawn lasted a few minutes longer before enemy plasma beams cut her in half. Ryan's ship, New Frontier, fought the longest. He managed to damage 2 enemy ships before his engines were destroyed. As his ship died around him, Ryan sent one last message to the evacuation fleet telling them which routes might still be safe. But even that small victory was lost. Vorthak fighters chased down the slow evacuation ships one by one. Families who had thought they were safe watched in horror as enemy ships appeared on their screens. The Vorthak showed no mercy to defenseless transports full of women and children. Dr. Lisa Warren was on one of the last ships to leave the surface. Her transport carried 50 Zalari refugees who had finally agreed to evacuate. The pilot was a young man named Carl who had never been in combat before. His hands shook as he tried to avoid the enemy fighters hunting them. "There's a gap in their patrol pattern," Carl said. "If we can reach the asteroid belt, we might be able to hide." But they never made it that far. 3 Vorthak fighters caught them just outside the planet's atmosphere. Carl tried to surrender by shutting down his engines and sending a message that they carried only civilians. The Vorthak answer was a missile that tore through the ship's hull. Lisa's transport crashed in the southern continent forests. She woke up in the wreckage with blood on her face and pain in her chest. Around her, the Zalari survivors sang quiet songs of fear and sorrow. Many were badly hurt, and their crystal bodies were cracked and dim. Through the broken cockpit window, Lisa saw Vorthak landing ships coming down from orbit. Ground troops poured out wearing dark armor and carrying weapons. They moved through the forest like hunters looking for prey. Lisa helped the wounded Zalari hide in a cave system they knew about. But the Vorthak had sensors that could find any living thing. Within hours, the cave was surrounded by enemy soldiers. The Vorthak commander was a tall being with cold eyes. He looked at the humans and Zalari hiding in the cave and smiled. Then he gave an order in his harsh language. His soldiers raised their weapons. Lisa stepped forward with her hands up. "We surrender. These are civilians. The Zalari are not even human. Please don't hurt them." The commander laughed. "You are all trespassers on Vorthak territory. The penalty for trespass is death." The weapons fired. Lisa watched her Zalari friends die one by one, their beautiful crystal bodies shattered into pieces that would never sing again. She closed her eyes and waited for her turn, but somehow the soldiers missed her in the darkness of the cave. Governor Jack Morrison made his last stand in the underground bunker beneath his office. A few hundred people had gathered there, hoping the thick walls would protect them. Jack tried to contact other human colonies to tell them what was happening, but the communication arrays were destroyed. His final message was sent on an old emergency beacon that might reach human space in a few months. Jack looked into the camera and spoke with a voice full of pain and anger. "This is Governor Jack Morrison of New Eden Colony. We are under attack by the Vorthak Dominion. They have murdered our people without mercy. They have killed innocent Zalari who only wanted peace. If anyone receives this message, remember what happened here. Remember that 2 million human beings lived and died on this world. Make them pay for what they have done." The bunker door exploded inward just as Jack finished speaking. Vorthak soldiers poured in like a black tide. Jack Morrison died still holding the beacon that carried his final words to the stars. The slaughter continued for 3 days. Every human settlement was burned. Every Zalari village was destroyed. The Vorthak hunted down survivors with cold efficiency. By the end, New Eden was a dead world covered in ash and bones. Admiral Hayes filed his report to the Vorthak High Command. Successful territorial acquisition with minimal resistance. The human colony had been eliminated as ordered. The planet was now ready for Vorthak colonization. But one thing the Admiral did not know was that Jack Morrison's emergency beacon had been found by a human patrol ship at the edge of the system. The message was already traveling toward Earth, carrying news of the greatest crime ever committed against humanity. The morning sun rose over New Eden like it had for 20 years since humans first landed on this world. Jack Morrison stood on his office balcony and watched the city wake up below him. The governor was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been a soldier once, but now he loved peace more than anything else. 2 million people called New Eden home. They had built beautiful cities with tall buildings and green parks. Children played in the streets while their parents worked in labs and factories. The air was clean and the sky was blue. This was what humans had dreamed of when they first looked up at the stars. Jack walked back into his office where his morning reports waited. The colony was doing well. Food production was up. The new hospital was almost finished. Trade with other human worlds was growing. But what made Jack most happy was the friendship his people had built with the Zalari. The Zalari were the first aliens humans had met who truly wanted peace. They looked like living crystals that sang beautiful songs to talk to each other. When humans first arrived, the Zalari had been scared. But Jack and his people had been patient and kind. Now the two species worked together like old friends. Dr. Lisa Warren knocked on Jack's door and came in. She was the colony's best scientist and spent most of her time studying the Zalari. Lisa was young with bright eyes and always had dirt under her nails from digging in alien soil. "Good morning, Governor," Lisa said with a smile. "The Zalari elders want to show us something amazing today. They found old ruins in the northern mountains. They think the buildings are thousands of years old." Jack nodded. The Zalari often shared their discoveries with humans. In return, humans helped them with medicine and technology. It was a good partnership, built built on trust and respect. That sounds wonderful, Lisa. Make sure you take plenty of pictures. The kids at school love seeing what you find. Lisa left to prepare for her trip. Jack went back to reading his reports. The colony had 3 small warships for protection, but they had never been needed. This part of space was peaceful. Pirates stayed away and no hostile aliens had ever been seen here. Captain Ryan Burke commanded the small defense fleet. His 3 ships were called New Frontier, Liberty Dawn, and Colonial Pride. Ryan was a good soldier and a proud father. His daughter Amy was studying at the Colony University. She wanted to learn how to talk to aliens like the Zalari. Ryan's ships patrolled the space around New Eden every day. His crews were well trained, but they mostly helped lost traders and checked for space debris. Real combat was something they had never faced. The ships had weapons, but Ryan hoped they would never need to use them. The day passed quietly like most days on New Eden. Workers built new homes. Scientists studied alien plants. Children learned in school about the wonders of the galaxy. Families ate dinner together and watched the sunset paint the sky in beautiful colors. But far away and deep space, something was moving toward them. A fleet of dark ships traveled faster than light toward New Eden. The ships belonged to the Vorthak Dominion, a race of warriors who believed they owned everything they could take by force. Admiral Kevin Hayes stood on the bridge of his flagship and stared at the star charts. The Vorthak were tall beings with gray skin and no mercy in their hearts. They had conquered many worlds and enslaved many species. To them, humans were just another weak race that needed to be crushed. "How long until we reach the human colony?" Hayes asked his navigation officer. 2 days, sir. Our scouts report the humans have only 3 small ships for defense. Hayes smiled a cold smile. The humans had built their colony on a world the Vorthak claimed as their own. It did not matter that humans had been there for 20 years. It did not matter that they lived in peace with the native Zalari. The Vorthak wanted this world, and they would take it. The next morning, Jack Morrison received an urgent message from his long-range sensors. Unknown ships were approaching New Eden. The sensor operator was a young man named Peter who had never seen anything like this before. "Governor, we're detecting 40 ships coming out of hyperspace. They're big, sir. Much bigger than anything we have." Jack felt cold fear in his stomach. 40 ships was more than enough to destroy his colony. He ordered all civilian ships to prepare for evacuation, while Captain Burke readied his small fleet. The alien ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the star system. They were dark and covered with weapons. Jack tried to send a message welcoming them and asking what they wanted. The reply came quickly, and it was not friendly. "This is Admiral Hayes of the Vorthak Dominion. You are trespassing on our territory. You have 72 hours to evacuate this world completely. Any humans or Zalari found here after that time will be destroyed. This is your only warning." Jack stared at the message in shock. 72 hours to evacuate 2 million people was impossible. Even if they had enough ships, it would take weeks to move everyone safely. He sent back a message asking for more time and offering to negotiate. The Vorthak Admiral did not answer. His ships moved closer to New Eden like hungry wolves circling their prey. Jack called an emergency meeting with all his department heads. They had to find a way to save their people. But deep in his heart, Jack knew the truth. The Vorthak had not come to negotiate. They had come to take his beautiful world, and they did not care who died to get it. The peaceful life his people had built was about to end in fire and death. The human armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Vorthak home system like an avenging angel of death. 1,200 ships appeared in perfect formation, with their weapons already charged and their shields at maximum power. The sight sent shockwaves through every Vorthak monitoring station in the system. Admiral Kevin Hayes stood on the bridge of his flagship and stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. The same alien who had ordered the massacre at New Eden now faced the consequences of his actions. His confident smile disappeared as the true size of the human fleet became clear on his screens. "This is impossible," Hayes said to his tactical officer. "Our intelligence report said humans have less than 300 ships total. Where did they get 1,200 warships?" His aide stammered a reply, but Hayes was no longer listening. He had spent his career fighting inferior species, who fled at the first sign of Vorthak's strength. He had never faced an enemy who could match the industrial might of the Dominion. The humans had done something no other race had ever accomplished. They had built a fleet large enough to threaten the Vorthak homeworld itself. Admiral Susan Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship Retribution and felt a cold satisfaction fill her heart. For one long year she had planned for this moment. Every ship placement, every weapon loadout, every tactical decision had been made with one goal in mind: complete destruction of the Vorthak military force. All ships report ready for combat, her communications officer announced. The fleet is awaiting your orders, Admiral. Carter looked out at the dark shapes of enemy vessels moving to intercept her force. 200 Vorthak warships against 1,200 human vessels. The odds were overwhelming, but she knew this battle would not be won by numbers alone. It would be won by the righteous fury of people who had seen their loved ones murdered by monsters. Open a channel to the entire Vorthak system, Carter ordered. Her voice was transmitted to every ship, every space station, and every settlement in the system. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of humanity's judgment. This is Admiral Susan Carter of the United Earth Defense Force. 1 year ago, your forces attacked and destroyed the peaceful human colony of New Eden. 2 million innocent people were murdered, including men, women, and children who had never harmed anyone. You also killed thousands of Zalari civilians whose only crime was friendship with humans. Carter paused and let her words sink in. She wanted every Vorthak in the system to understand exactly why they were about to die. We offered you our surrender. We begged for mercy. We promised to leave peacefully if you would just let our people live. Your answer was genocide. Today you will learn that humans remember their dead, and we never forgive those who murder innocents. The battle began with humanity's long-range plasma cannons opening fire at distances the Vorthak had thought impossible. Streams of superheated matter crossed the void between the fleets like spears of light. The first volley struck 6 Vorthak vessels before their crews even realized they were under attack. Captain Helen Rodriguez watched through her viewport as Earth's vengeance fired its main batteries. The Dreadnought's plasma cannons could destroy any known target with a single direct hit. Her gunners had trained for months to achieve this level of accuracy, and now their practice was paying off in enemy blood. Direct hit on Target 7, her weapons officer reported with grim satisfaction. Enemy vessel breaking apart. Target 8 is attempting evasive maneuvers, but we have a lock. The Vorthak formation began to crumble under the precise fire of human weapons. Their ships had been designed for close-range combat where their heavy armor and powerful guns would give them an advantage. But the humans refused to play by Vorthak rules. They stayed at long range and picked off enemy vessels one by one with surgical precision. Admiral Hayes tried desperately to close the distance between the fleets. If he could get his ships close enough to use their main weapons, he might still be able to inflict serious damage on the human force. But every time his vessels moved forward, they were met by devastating fire that tore through their armor like paper. Sir, we've lost 40% of the fleet, his tactical officer reported. The humans are using some kind of advanced targeting system. They're hitting our ships faster than we can maneuver. Hayes realized with growing horror that his forces were being systematically destroyed. The humans were not just winning this battle. They were conducting a careful dissection of his fleet. Every shot was placed for maximum effect. Every target was chosen to create the greatest possible damage to Vorthak combat capability. Commander Jake Sullivan watched the space battle from the hangar bay of his assault transport. His Rangers were loaded into boarding pods ready to capture any enemy vessels that tried to surrender. But so far, no Vorthak ships had asked for quarter. They fought to the death, just as they had taught their enemies to expect. Boarding teams stand ready, Jake announced over the comm system. Remember what these monsters did to our people at New Eden. Show them the same mercy they showed our families. The Rangers wore powered armor that made them faster and stronger than any normal human. Their weapons were designed to fight in the confined spaces of enemy ships where every corridor could hide an ambush. They had trained for months in mock Vorthak vessels, learning to navigate alien architecture and overcome exotic defensive systems. Dr. Lisa Warren monitored the battle from the intelligence center deep inside the Retribution. She watched as human weapons systematically dismantled the Vorthak fleet piece by piece. Each destroyed enemy ship represented justice for the innocent people who had died at New Eden, but she felt no joy, only a cold satisfaction that the murderers were finally paying for their crimes. The Vorthak command ship is trying to retreat, one of her analysts reported. Should we let them go, Admiral? Carter's answer came immediately over the comm system. Negative. No one who participated in the New Eden massacre leaves this system alive. All ships focus fire on the enemy flagship. Admiral Hayes felt his ship shudder as human plasma bolts struck its hull. His flagship was the most heavily armored vessel in the Vorthak fleet, but even it could not withstand the concentrated fire of dozens of enemy weapons. Emergency lights flashed as systems failed throughout the ship. Sir, our engines are offline, his engineering officer reported. Weapons are down to 30% power and our shields have collapsed. We need to abandon ship. Hayes looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were the same beings who had cheered when New Eden burned. They had celebrated the slaughter of human families and the destruction of a peaceful world. Now, they faced the consequences of their actions. Signal our surrender, Hayes ordered. Maybe the humans will show more mercy than we did. But Carter was not in a merciful mood. Her response to the surrender request was another salvo of plasma fire that turned the Vorthak flagship into an expanding cloud of debris. Admiral Hayes died, knowing that his victims had been avenged by a species he had thought too weak to fight back. The space battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Vorthak home fleet had been completely destroyed. 200 enemy warships had been reduced to wreckage floating in the cold vacuum of space. The orbital defense platforms around Vorthak Prime had been systematically eliminated by human bombers. The planet's military infrastructure lay in ruins. Carter opened a communication channel to the surface of Vorthak Prime, where millions of aliens cowered in their cities waiting to learn their fate. Her message was broadcast to every settlement on the planet. People of Vorthak Prime, your military has been defeated and your leaders are dead. You have a choice to make. You can surrender unconditionally and face trial for the crimes committed at New Eden, or you can continue to resist and face the consequences. You have 1 hour to decide. The response came in less than 30 minutes. The Vorthak civilian government transmitted their complete surrender, along with a list of military officers who had participated in the New Eden operation. They also provided the locations of all Vorthak military bases throughout their empire, and promised full cooperation with human occupation forces. Commander Sullivan led the first wave of Rangers to land on Vorthak Prime. His soldiers secured the capital city and arrested every government official who had been in power during the HFY massacre. The Vorthak offered no resistance. They had seen what happened to their mighty fleet and had no desire to experience human wrath firsthand. Dr. Warren accompanied the occupation force to document Vorthak war crimes. In the government archives, she found detailed records of the New Eden operation, including video footage of the massacre. The evidence would be used in the war crimes trials that would follow. But she also found something else that surprised her. Records of other genocides committed by the Vorthak against dozens of species over the past 1,000 years. New Eden was not an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of systematic murder that had eliminated entire civilizations. My God, Warren said as she read through the files. They've been doing this for centuries. Whole species wiped out because the Vorthak wanted their worlds. We're not the first to seek justice, but we might be the first to actually achieve it. The news of humanity's victory spread throughout the galaxy faster than light itself.